All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck, and I'm along with my coworker, Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic, and here we are in beautiful downtown Chicago. It is obviously nighttime. We thought we'd be doing this, I think, maybe before the sunset, but that is just seemingly not to be the case for a Chicago street race. I woke up today. Didn't even bring my jacket, let alone an umbrella. It was like 10% chance of rain. And rain, once again, plagues this race all day long, seemingly. Ends up being shortened. A timed race for the first time in history, maybe, Jordan? Is that correct? At least modern history.
I think so, yeah. I can't remember another time the NASCAR race was timed.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
yeah, I take that back. It's happened before.
Not timed, but there's been a lap where it would end, but not like a certain amount of time,
I feel like in history they have said like the race is going to end at this time before. Like back in the day, there was like darkness was coming, and they're like, this is the cutoff.
Okay, I always thought that was a lap, where they'd say, okay, it will
maybe.
end at this lap.
I don't know. I feel
you
like
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't like a timer counting down to, the end. Anyway.
Well, didn't Almirola, when he won in New Hampshire, didn't they say there was like 10 minutes left in the race or something, or is that 10 laps?
We'll have to go back.
All right, now you have me wondering.
Now we've stumbled off to a.
Well, I don't understand why you wouldn't bring your umbrella to a racetrack. Like you just always bring your umbrella to a racetrack.
Did you bring yours?
Yeah, mine's always Mine is literally always in my umbrella in my briefcase.
So when I ran out to go interview SVG in the rain today, and I said I'm going to the care center, I'm running out, and you're like, good luck, buddy. I'm not getting my shoes dirty. So I had to run out and got absolutely drenched. My hat is still wet. My shoes still have puddles in them. You didn't think, you know what? Here's my umbrella, friend. Here's my umbrella.
I am not here to bail you out from your poor life choices.
Okay. All right. Noted.
Poor planning on you. I'm not helping you.
Noted. Well, I did not expect there to be weather. It was actually a beautiful morning. We had a great tweet up in the sun.
It's great.
People were getting sunburned, had lots of water. And then all of a sudden, like an hour before, somehow it starts to get cloudy. And it's like, oh, there's a storm coming. Maybe. Oh, I hope this doesn't. Well, don't worry if it comes. It'll pass quickly. No lightning. It's okay. And then just one after the other, rain. So pretty crazy. But at least they got a race in. At least there's no.
They got the concerts in. That's good.
They got the concerts in.
Like baby steps, man. Baby steps.
All right. So one of the before we even get into this, one of the big talking points on Twitter was, man, they should really start this earlier. I get it. I do get it. Like you have a track with no lights. You can't run Monday in theory, right? I don't think they could have unless they
say they can.
Okay. They would have had to pay a lot of money.
It would have been a lot of logistic nightmares, and who knows if they actually would have done that too, because they may have been.
And so you say, well, why would you only, they say the cutoff time is 8:20 p.m. local. We're starting this green flag at 4 p.m. local. You're only leaving yourself less than 4.5 hours to run the race if there's any sort of delays or whatever, which there obviously were. And so you don't get the full distance for the second straight year, even though the distance was shortened this year, right? Could you run it earlier? Of course, you could say, hey, let's start it at 1. We'll do the concerts after, whatever. But remember, this is billed as a racing and music festival, right? It is supposed to be both. And I think probably a lot of the thought is, first of all, you have to figure TV has a big part of it. Like,
you think?
NBC had the IndyCar race beforehand, so it was a lead in. And the more, this was what was this, like the second highest rated race last year or something. It was a big high rated race. So the closer you get to prime time for this, the better NBC's looking at it for that. And, again, you probably just think, well, if there's going to be rain, it's probably not going to be that long of a rain, maybe a passing shower, and they get it through. So, yeah, I guess maybe you could have said put the concerts afterwards. Maybe they'll do that in the future. But I can't really sit here and be like, this was like, how do you know? How do you know that yes, it's the afternoon in the summer. Okay. But we were here several days, and there was not one drop of rain at all, not a hint of rain. Until right before the Cup race on Sunday. So I don't know. What do you think? Does this need to be earlier?
Wow. I really thought you were going to go on a rant about this. I thought you were going to be like completely pro. This race should have started at 1 o'clock and we would have solved all of these problems. I agree with you, and I've always had that stance. Like, TV rules the roost when it comes to these things. They want it at a certain time. That is what you do. When somebody's paying you $1 billion, you listen to what they say.
Well, I actually am not saying it for those reasons, really. I'm not saying that you need to kowtow to TV.
You do.
I'm just saying for the logistics of what this event is.
Yeah, I mean,
is about the concerts.
It's a part
and
of
the racing.
You can't do a concert. I don't think you can do a concert at night here on a Sunday night. I don't think that's possible, And so it is the concert was one of the draws of getting people out to the racetrack who maybe aren't going to come out here on their own, and then they're going to stay for the race. And so you look at all of this. I don't have an issue with it. It sucks. NASCAR is apparently cursed with Mother Nature as of late, especially here in Chicago. And what happened today was really unfortunate because this was a perfect weekend nearly up until the time, like literally the engine's fired. And then this, like 2 seconds after they're fired, NASCAR comes on like, nope, turn those engines off and cover the cars. Like, it's just really, really unfortunate because this was a great event. And there was an energy and a buzz to this race when you walked on that grid pre-race that you don't see most weeks. And I don't know what to tell you. It just sucks. But moving this race up to 1 o'clock for all the reasons you listed was just not feasible.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there was so much positivity around this event. Year two, you didn't feel like there was much pushback from the city and the residents this time. It was sort of like a lot of the logistical things had been answered last year. It's a 5-week build. It took them 6 fewer days. In terms of the setup and teardown this year, right? So like they shaved time off. They tried to, really reduce the window where they were really inconveniencing people. And it seemed like the city was very excited about it. I mean, you had the mayor talking in the drivers' meeting about NASCAR is uniting the country. He was, on pit road in a driver's wearing a fire suit beforehand. I mean, it's like the city's gotten on board. People walking around Michigan Avenue, where all the hotels are and everybody stays. I mean, they loved it. Like people were very excited. And then the drivers, the enthusiasm for the driver. I didn't hear any driver go, you know what? Yeah, I think this has maybe run its course, or I don't know, let's try somewhere different. Like everybody's like, this is cool. This is a great event. We're having a great time. We love this. Wow, we're so surprised the city's actually really enjoyable because there was all this, trepidation coming here in year one. Oh, what's it going to be like? People, it feels like the industry really has enjoyed it. Like the crew guys, all that, when you talk to people, I'm sure it's the same for you. So, it just felt like there was such positive vibes. And to me, you just chalk it up to bad luck. Like it just sucks. I don't know why this weather has come out of nowhere twice in 2 years at the very key moments. It's very unfortunate, but it has. I don't know. I don't think that's the moment to go, well, they should have done this, this, and this. You can plan, but you cannot control the weather. I mean, how many NASCAR events this year, again, have been weather impacted over and over and over? I don't know what it is, what has to happen to, climate change. Is this why we're seeing more rain and more storms? I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But it's just very bad luck, it seems to me. I don't know what else you say about it.
Yeah, it's nonsensical to think that NASCAR shouldn't be in Chicago. This is the third largest market in the country. The city has embraced it. And your point about how the pushback against this race that kind of existed last year has largely dissipated. It's just not there this year. You see it a little bit here and there, but for largely, the city's been all on board. Any criticism from the local politicians, anything, has largely been muted. The city has been a good partner to NASCAR. NASCAR has learned from year one and made some tweaks. As you said, the build went from 26 days to 19 days, cutting it by 6. And so it's gotten smoother. The impact on the city in terms of shutting down roads and everything is not to the degree that it once was. To me, my personal anecdote is it was much easier to get around the city this year too, because how the road structure and closures and everything, and there wasn't the backup that we saw last year. This is a great race. This is a great event. You need races like this. You need events like this on the schedule. We often talk about how, outside of the Daytona 500 and outside of some other of these bigger races, the Phoenix Championship or maybe the Talladega in the playoffs, the schedule can sometimes just feel like it kind of runs together and it's hard to separate these things. That is not at all the case this weekend. This weekend it was, this is cool, this is awesome. The industry embraced it, the city embraced it. There was this big feel to it, and it very much had a vibe of Formula One. And I know it's maybe unfair to compare the two, but in this instance, it's a very fair comparison. Like, you walked on the grid today. It was like you go over this bridge, you walk through the garage, which is like on a city street. You go up a bridge to get to pit road, then you go down. And as you walk over the bridge and down at the start of the pre-race ceremonies, you're like, whoa, like it just kind of hits you because you really can't see the grandstands and everything else. And it was like, whoa, and it was really cool. And it was like, then it was like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is how you make an event happen. And I was talking to a couple friends of mine who were here, who just decided to come down for the day because they wanted to check it out. They weren't able to come last year. And they loved it. And they thought it was cool. And they were marveling at how NASCAR was able to pull this off. And good kudos to them. They built a track in downtown Chicago that is a fantastic course. We so often talk about street courses and how they're just boring, right? A lot of 90-degree turns, not a lot of excitement. This is not that. Like, there's some 90-degree turns here, but there's also some areas where it really showcases a driver's skill set. And this is a fantastic street circuit that pushes these guys to the edge. You've got an opportunity here to build your brand and push yourself into a market that is really untapped. Like, you need to be here. And the argument that you don't need to be here and everything else, it's nonsensical. It really is. So to sit here and lament, oh, why is NASCAR doing this, et cetera, like, just stop. It's not even a discussion worth having.
Well, look, and I could see if you're watching this from afar and you're like, I don't even get this whole thing. It's hard to see on TV, the great aerial shots. It's you can get a somewhat sense of it, but I think it's hard to, if you're at home, maybe you just don't get what the big deal is. And I can appreciate that. And people say, well, Chicagoland, let's go to Chicagoland. And sure, it'd be a great next gen race for sure. But there's something about this where it's just like, let me say this. Let me put it this way. By the end of the second year of the Clash, I think there was some sort of sense of like, this is cool, but like, let's try this somewhere else. I don't know if they needed to come back to the Coliseum for year 3, right? Like, it was sort of like, cool, all right, it's fine. I don't really feel that way at all about Chicago. Like, I would be sad if there was not a year 3 of Chicago. I would be like legit disappointed because I've really enjoyed this weekend. This has become one of my favorite weekends of the entire year. Just, again, the ability to stay downtown. You're right across from the racetrack. The whole racing community is right here. I mean, we were talking to people at the Tweet Up today who ran into Alex Bowman and Kyle Larson coming out of the Starbucks right across the street here this morning. And they're just like, hey, can we get a picture? They're like, yeah, sure. They're not like mobbed like they are at Talladega. They fit in, they blend in. Now, if you're a NASCAR fan, you might notice them and they'll stop for you and they'll say, hey, sure, yeah, no problem. I mean, the drivers are all walking across the street with their backpacks. Nobody has their motorhome here. It's great people watching if you're looking for drivers, you know what I mean? But they're just enjoying it all. Like, they're just soaking it all up. So, to me, it's like they enjoy that. The fans enjoy it. You're getting so much closer than you can in other races. Now, is it for the traditional NASCAR fan? Is it built for them specifically?
No, but it doesn't need to be. You've got 38 races in the schedule, and I can't say this enough. You have 38 races on the schedule. You can have a little bit of everything to satisfy everyone's palate. You can satisfy, if people want short tracks, NASCAR's done a good job of going to Iowa and North Wilkesboro, and you've got short tracks. If you want super speedways, well, you got those now in spades with Atlanta coming back. Like, you can give everybody a little bit of everything. It shouldn't all be the same. It should have the same look and feel every single week. You need events like this to differentiate itself. And I agree with you about, you make a great point about the Coliseum and how, year 2 is like, okay, this is good, but it's not the same energy and excitement, right? I will say, I think part of that here at Chicago was because last year was just, it was a mess. And, it wasn't really what it was supposed to be. We didn't get the concerts. We didn't get everything that it was supposed to be. So it was kind of like a very truncated weekend. This was like going into, it was like, okay, now we're really going to actually get to experience it all. And that's what happened.
To me, when I think about this weekend, you did get more of the full experience, right? It was a shame that the Cup race was rain impacted, but we also saw, again, and you're talking about the course itself, right? always the racing has to be at the heart of it if this is going to be successful. And I think we saw enough in that Xfinity race, right? Like
my
the
goodness.
Cup race last year was great, but that Xfinity race, the battle between the two last place finishers today, Kyle Larson and
funny to
Shane
think
Gisbergen,
about.
yeah, who we thought would be the two favorites going into the Cup race. You know, it was like that was so spectacular, those first two stages, until the cautions then started coming out. And then, of course, SVG still works his magic and is able to make passes. Think about all the expectations going into this race last year. People were like, can they even make it around this course? The track's going to be blocked with every caution. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be such a clown show.
Crash fest.
Absolutely, right? And it turns out they can really race. They can make passes. You don't hear anybody going, well, I was stuck in whatever, right?
No.
Like they can move. If it's a faster car, you can move. And then they're so on edge that people are making mistakes. They're bringing out cautions. So there's going to be movement through the field, right? And,
absolutely.
and I'm not sure you can easily replicate that somewhere else. Like if you were going to take this to another city, this city actually lays out so well. I mean, with the park being right there, with all the hotels and right in the city center. I mean, aside from like Central Park in New York, which I don't think New Yorkers are going to love to shut down Central Park necessarily for a street race. That would probably be quite heavy lifting if that was to happen.
Hey, I used to think they wouldn't be able to race in downtown Chicago, but here
for sure.
No, but your point though, you're right. Yeah.
But I don't really know that you can easily replicate that.
This is designed for big events, big concerts, and everything like that, and it works out really, really well. And this track, you really were able to see drivers' skill and ability, not just SVG, but guys make moves and set people up and make passes. Like they were pushing themselves to the limit. That's what you want to see out of a course, whether it's an oval or a street or a road. You want to see these guys pushed and made uncomfortable, but allowed to flex their muscle on what they can do behind the wheel. And this course does that.
Well, we got to see that on full display in the battle for the win.
So good.
Because first of all, it looked like, okay, well, it's going to come down to these guys on rain tires. They stayed out on the wet tires, and you would have thought, the slicks are going to be able to come up through the field. Time was running out. There was a lot of cautions. But you were seeing Christopher Bell, like he was the first guy on slicks for a while, and he wasn't really moving forward. Like he restarted 13th, and he was up to 11th, and he got to 9th, but there just wasn't going to be enough time. So it looked like it was going to come down to a battle between Joey Hand and Alex Bowman. Bowman eventually is able to set up a pass and make a pretty sweet move and sort of drive away for the lead. Looks like game over at that point, right? But then all of a sudden you see, here comes Tyler Reddick, right? And he's got these slick tires, and boy, he has come, out of nowhere.
He's chopping seconds off.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, whoa, hold on here. This is in the period where the clock has expired, but you got these 2 more laps now, and these 2 more laps may decide the race. He is pushing as hard as he can. As Tyler Reddick does, right? He's going for it and clips the wall, doesn't get there, right? But what would have happened if he got there? We asked Alex Bowman this after the race, right? And he's like, well, once I knew those guys were coming, first of all, on slick tires, I was picking up the pace a lot more. So, and I think you saw that a little bit. Reddick said, I would have gotten there, but I don't know what would have happened once I got there. I think it would have been a tough pass. First of all, Bowman would have made his car very wide. So, and there was really only one dry line at that point, it seemed like. So where would Reddick have made the pass? He would have had to take his slick tires and try to go in the wet to make a pass. I mean, that could have been, maybe that's a collision. I don't know what would happen. Obviously, Reddick would have liked to have that back. He's down on himself again. He sees another one slip away. He feels like the mistake's on him. What would have happened? We don't know, but I'm not convinced that it was just going to be, if Reddick hadn't done that, he wins. I don't know if it's that cut and dry. What do you think?
I thought he had speed. He was coming in a hurry, and I know Bowman said he was picking it up, but the lap times indicate that Reddick was, whatever Bowman was doing, Reddick was doing it more, and he was going to be there. And sure, you can talk about the lines, and whether Bowman would have been able to or Reddick would have been able to maintain his line, that kind of thing. But he also maybe is a little bit more aggressive in that situation too, and it's really easy to get in. You can just tag somebody in the bumper here and get them a little squirrely, and all of a sudden they're out of that preferred line, and there are passing zones here. I just think the speed differential was too quick, that the slick tires at that time were paying dividends, and he was going to pass him one way or another.
Well, it's a big moment for Alex Bowman.
Oh, huge.
He was, first of all, for several reasons, right? I mean, he hadn't won since, March of 2 years ago.
2022.
And, at the time, I think it wasn't he was leading the regular season points before the back injury and all that stuff.
And he had a great average finish, and he was putting together a very, very good year.
It just, ever since then, it just hasn't been, hasn't been clicking for him as it's been going so well for his teammates. A lot of talk about, is he on the hot seat? He says, well, listen, I've never heard that internally. Nobody's ever talked that way to me internally in Hendrick. They've only been supportive. I've got a contract through the end of 2026. But certainly people have been talking, what does this mean for Alex Bowman? If he can't win. Now, I've all along, we do these previews every week on The Athletic, and I keep picking Alex Bowman. They keep saying, who's the dark horse? Who's the dark horse pick? And he's down so low in the odds. And I'm like, how can you put him this low? He's a Hendrick car. He could win any week. Did I think he was going to be a favorite? No, I thought it was going to be like an SVG or a Larson or somebody like that. But he's a capable road racer. I mean, he's shown that. I don't think this is a huge shock by any means. I really don't. But this was an important win either way for him to just show, hey, I can still do it. I'm still here. And I think it changes the narrative around him.
It's huge because there was a lot of chatter, fair or not, that his job with Hendrick Motorsports was in question. And he was, whether he actually was or not, we don't know, and it didn't sound like he thought he was. But Jeff Gordon kind of alluded to the fact, like, you are expected. I mean, you've said it, Fred. You were expected to win when you're Hendrick Motorsports. That is life of being a Hendrick Motorsports driver, and for whatever reason, it has not happened. And now, you obviously had the head injury, had the broken back, he had a new crew chief. There's a lot of things that have been changed with Alex Bowman over these last couple of years, and it's been hard. But at the end of the day, you got to win. And when you've got Kyle Larson winning multiple races and William Byron winning multiple races, and Chase Elliott has had a very, very good year, and oh, by the way, he's won too, and also recently won a championship, you can't go winless. You can't be on the playoff bubble where you're not certain you're going to make it or not. And I think the thing that jumps out really is he led all of 6 laps this year. 6. Like, that's not acceptable by any measure. And so when that does happen, there are going to be questions. And this shows that, like, Bowman is a winning race car driver. He's got 8 career wins now. He's won on a variety of racetracks. He has shown that in the right situation, like, he is capable of being a threat and somebody that can regularly win and contend. It just hasn't been the case. This was huge, and it seemingly answers whatever questions there were about his job status. What was your interpretation? Like, Jeff Gordon was pretty adamant that, like, I don't want to say adamant's probably not the right word, but, like, he indicated that Bowman was coming back and that Ally likes him and everything like this. I think this was big. I don't think that can be stated enough, that this indicates that this is why he is a Hendrick Motorsports driver, and he's very well liked by his team and by his sponsors, and he has now he has erased the one thing on his resume that has been the big question mark these last couple of years.
Yeah, and look, I think it's tough from the outside because there's always that fourth Hendrick car that doesn't seem to run as well as the other 3 cars at times, right? And so you're always like, well, what is that? Is it the driver? Is it the team? Is it just that big of an organization? It's tough to get all 4 clicking at times. But I do think, again, when you look at his results, and we've said this on the podcast, like, he's not running bad. Like, it's not like he hasn't led laps, as you said. Yes, he hasn't won, but they're running decent. Like, they have speed. So, you don't think so?
I mean, they're okay, but they look where they're in points. Like,
he's around where, look, he gets himself off the bubble now by doing this, right? But he was right around where Ty Gibbs is in points. I think he was plus 50 whatever coming into today.
Sure, but Ty Gibbs is a second-year driver and, like, still learning this.
Yeah, but we're talking about in terms of the bubble.
Yeah.
I think he's ahead of Chastain and Chris Buescher in points. So now part of that is the win today, but Chris Buescher suddenly, remember, because last week we were talking about it was going to be Buescher, Chastain, Gibbs, Bowman. Now Bowman's out of that conversation because Bubba's sort of too far back in theory to try to make it on points, especially we think there's going to be another new winner. So now you're looking at that between, really it's sort of Buescher, Chastain at the moment, and then Gibbs is in there. I still do think there's going to be one more new winner that we don't expect. So suddenly Chris Buescher's on the line, but Bowman doesn't have to worry about that now. And that's what's really key for him, because I think you can race differently without that points racing type pressure, knowing that you have a win. And honestly, too, going for the win was what determined that call, because if you were listening to their radio, right, they're like, man, should we go to slicks here? And it seemed like slicks was going to be the winning call. It seemed like there was going to be a dry line, and that was going to be where the speed was. And Bowman says, if I take slicks, I'm not sure we can win, where I think we have at least a shot to win if we stay on these wet tires and we don't pit. And that was the winning call.
It was smart move, because it's a realization of, hey, if we are going to win, and you need to win for all the reasons we mentioned, like winning, points isn't going to get you where you need to go. Like you can't continue. I don't think you can race scared. I think you have to be aggressive for these opportunities. And I was talking to crew chief last week, and he's like, when you're in these situations, you have to be aggressive, because you don't know if you're going to be in them again, and you've got to go for the win. And if you pit there, you're falling back. You're done. You're not going to win. You need to capitalize on the opportunity before you. Especially when you've shown throughout the course of the year, you're having a year where you're not been dominant. You haven't been putting yourself in position on the regular to maybe get a win, and you had done it today. Everything had fallen into place, and you were in the position. It's up to you now to capitalize. And I think it was obviously it was the right call, but even in the moment, if it had gone wrong, it still was the smart call.
So where do you see things now for these? Are you worried if you're a Chris Buescher? Are you worried if you're a Chastain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel confident they're both going to make it. I look at the upcoming races. Richmond and Michigan are two races that Chris won at a year ago. They've had speed this year. They just have kind of been snake bit a little bit. And Ross has seemingly had more speed in his race car as of late as well. I mean, he was in contention at Nashville before getting wrecked. I feel like both those guys are going to be good, whether they get in on points or get a win. But again, you don't know. And so there is definitely concern, because it's the uncertainty. Like, yeah, you may have everything go right. You may have the speed and you may put yourself in position, but somebody takes you out on a restart and you end up in the wall, your day's over, and there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing that you can rely on is the fact that you do have the speed and you can continue to put yourself in these positions. But you've got a Watkins, or you don't have a Watkins Glen this year. You've got a Daytona coming up, and you don't know what's going to happen there. You've got a Michigan, which has been been unpredictable. You have a Richmond race, which it seems like that has been who knows how that's going to unfold. And then you obviously have Indianapolis, which we don't know what we're going to expect. We're going to see there. And so there's going to be opportunities to get wins, but there's also be opportunities for guys to do some things where in fuel mileage at Pocono or in Indianapolis or even in Michigan, you might be able to steal a win.
To me, it's shaping up to be Daytona at this point, because of the races that are left are mostly traditional type races. Even Kyle Busch said this weekend, right behind us on this patio here doing his media availability, that he thinks Daytona, as weird as it is probably his best shot to get a win and make the playoffs at this point. So, I think a lot of guys are feeling that way, right? Bubba's probably going to feel that way. There's going to be multiple guys that feel that way. And that's why I think either Chastain or Buescher at this point probably misses, because somebody's going to knock the cut line down, and then it's going to come down to those guys, because Ty Gibbs seems to be running well enough that I think he's 30-something points ahead of them, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me. But he's somewhat clear in front of them at the moment, and I don't see him, collapsing. It feels like he's pretty competitive at this moment. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I think both Buescher and Chastain are obviously playoff worthy, but it's a matter of, like, if there's a new winner, and it's – especially if you get to Daytona, it happens too. There's not going to be much time to respond. I mean, you're going in Darlington the next week, and that's it.
Good luck.
It could be if they stay close in points, it could be a Buescher versus Chastain battle at Darlington. That could be what everybody's watching, because the winner of Darlington is probably going to be somebody that already has, a victory. You would think. So
Yeah, I mean, Darlington is not generally a track where surprises happen, though Eric Jones did win there 2 years ago, and you never know, right? Like, it's also been a track that recently has been very attrition-filled and has sidelined a lot of guys, whether mechanical failures or accidents. So maybe something happens there, but your point is right. Like, you look at it, if you're a mid-sized team or anything like that, or you're buried in points, your best shot is probably Daytona. And you look at it right now, and it's Truex is plus 125, Gibbs is plus 84, Chastain is plus 53, and Buescher is plus 45. Wallace is the first guy out, minus 45.
Speaking of Bubba Wallace, some at least minor controversy at the end of the race where he'd gotten dumped by Alex Bowman. Obviously, Bowman afterwards says how embarrassed he was about it, how he tried calling Bubba and texting him during the rain delay. He beating himself up about it and felt very badly, says it was a total mistake, and was apologetic. However, Bubba obviously was really mad, and especially when Bowman then goes on to win the race, and Bubba on the cooldown lap bumps him. Now, to me, the Bubba fans are very upset with me because I said this is not good after the race, and Bowman then defends Bubba, I guess, and says he had a right to be mad, and he says, he shouldn't be penalized. He barely hit me, and he was, I deserved it, kind of thing. I have to disagree with Alex Bowman. I think Bubba should be penalized. I think the window nets are down. It's a cool down lap, and it wasn't just like he came up and sort of rubbed him. I mean, he doored him and he put him in the fence. That's an unsafe thing, and so that's a fine. I think, I'm trying to take the people out of it. That's how I view these situations, just like with Hocevar, whoever. If those are two blank cars and, I don't know the numbers, I don't know the drivers, and I see a driver did that on the cooldown lap and there's somebody had their window net down, I'm saying that's a fine. I go back to 2006. You remember, of course, Jordan, Carl Edwards, Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Michigan in the Xfinity race. Mm-hmm. Carl was upset because Dale Jr. had spun him out. Dale Jr. ends up winning the race. I think it was the only time Dale Jr. got booed in Victory Lane, by the way. But Dale Jr. has his hand out the window, and Carl comes up and door slams him, right? Well, Carl got fined for that. It was a fine. It was a $20,000 fine. So that's a long ago precedent, but that's the kind of thing where, hey, it's on a cooldown lap. The driver is maybe starting to undo the belts or something. That's not safe. I think there was a situation as well when, wasn't it with the Kenseth Keselowski deal at Charlotte all those years ago?
That was what triggered Matt jumping Brad between the haulers.
Right. He was mad because he had started to undo his belts already and said it is the cooldown lap, and Brad came up and rubbed him, and it was deemed to be an unsafe thing, right? So to me, sorry, no, I think it's something that should be fine. I don't think there's any points or suspension, but it just, you just fined Hocevar $50,000 for spinning somebody out under caution. You just put the race winner into the wall with his window net down. No, I'm sorry. It's a fine. That's just what it is.
Yeah, and I think the bigger issue to me is I think it's the decision making in this moment where you are on the bubble and you can't afford to throw away any points. You need every single point you can get. And why do something that potentially could get you fined, could potentially get you a points deduction? We've seen drivers be penalized, points for different acts. Like, don't put yourself in a position where you're making NASCAR make a decision that could negatively impact you, because you can't afford, the money's the money. That's not a big thing, but the points is the thing. And if you are going to dock him points or even open that door for NASCAR to do that, you just can't do that. And I think that's the bigger thing, where in that moment it sucks. You got wrong, and it doesn't help that the guy behind you that wrecked you earlier also went on to win the race, which only adds to the frustration, especially in the position you're in. But you have to make a better decision in that moment.
Yeah, and again, it's not, I understand why Bubba fans want to jump to his defense, because he's constantly getting attacked for everything. Every little thing he does, he's getting attacked for online. And certainly I don't condone any of the attacks toward him. But again, it's taking the people out of the situation and looking at what the situation for what it is without saying who's in the car. That's, to me, is a act worth penalizing, because you have to send a message, just as they did to Hocevar, that you can't do that. So that's what it is. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, Grace, is it didn't happen on pit road. If it happens on pit road, I'm very much you can't do that. That we've seen that before, and NASCAR has been very adamant about that. You cannot have contact with another car on pit road because there's people about. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough situation, but you just have to maintain your cool as hard as it is. And if you are that upset, then talk to him after the race or do something else, but not that where, again, you're now at the mercy of NASCAR and its rules.
Speaking of Hocevar, real quick, he had some comments this week where he was asked about his fine that he got. NASCAR, since we've last podcasted, at least on the Teardown, I was on DJD Reloaded this week talking about this, but he was fined and docked some points for the Harrison Burton incident last week, which we were saying should have been. I thought during the race it should have been done, but it wasn't. So they penalized him. But Hocevar basically said, hey, he thought there was some SMT data that sort of showed otherwise, indicating that Harrison slammed on the brake, and that's why he was spun out. And he basically said that he felt his team sort of rallied around him and backed him, and indicated that he wasn't really taking a lesson from it. I don't think. I mean, it doesn't seem like I didn't hear anything that was like, oh my gosh, that was totally the right call. I shouldn't have done that. That was really bad. I've learned my lesson now. I didn't really hear a lot of that. What's your take on, I guess, what he had to say?
If he's going to sit there and say it's SMT data, well, then in that case, it seems to be happening to him a lot. That's the problem, is that this is not the first time you've been in an incident like this, and there always seems to be some kind of justification or some kind of, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that kind of thing. And at some point, your record is what your record is. and I just look at it, and it's there's been questions about his maturity coming in the Cup Series because of the incidents in the Truck Series, and they were repeated. And there was a lot of concerns about, is he ready to handle this? How is he going to be? And he's done a fairly good job, but there has been a couple of things that have kind of flared up. And something like this, which was, it doesn't matter if what the SMT data shows. It is very clear, he hooked him and made contact with him. Goes back to what I just said about Bubba. Don't put yourself in that position. That's what it's about. If the possibility exists that you may end up hooking him and spinning him out under caution, then don't do it. Because what does your track record say? Your track record doesn't really support that this is an accident and that this is a one-time thing and, just let it go because he's learned his lesson. No, this is a pattern of mistakes, repeated mistakes, where incidents happen on the racetrack or Hocevar loses his cool and does something in this nature. It's inexcusable. You can't happen. And you hope that he does learn from her eventually, because at some point it's going to have to sink in. He is way too talented. He is absurdly talented, where he's going to put himself in a really good opportunity in the next couple of years to make that jump to a bigger team if he wants to. But when you have these moments, you're giving those teams reason to say, you know what, we're good. We're going to go in a different direction.
Well, we're already on the topic of officiating rules, things like that. So
I'm just going to sit back here and let you cook.
You don't even know what I'm going to say.
I don't care. This is it. This is what I've been waiting for.
What? What am I going to say?
I don't know. What do you, I think, don't you think stage breaks are a wonderful thing? We need more stage breaks. Maybe we should have more stage breaks.
So, first of all, I really do like how this new policy of, because they said even before the first major break of that, when the race was going to end, they said 8:20. Because remember last year with this race, it got to a point where teams had already made their bet on the strategy. Christopher Bell's team was really upset, right? And then they said, all right, it's going to end at lap whatever it is, or there's X amount of laps left. Or I don't remember how they phrased it.
They were very forthright and upfront about what their plan was from the get-go.
This year.
This year. And that's what you want to see. That's what we're happy about.
Right, exactly. And I think that was really good because it helped lay the strategy out for the teams, because the team said afterwards, like, as our engineers immediately went to work trying to figure out, okay, how many laps do we think is going to be left? And then that helps, it's a guess, sure, because you don't know how many cautions are going to be, but you're trying to plan out your fuel strategy and all that kind of stuff, right? So is the stage break thing you're alluding to, I wouldn't have minded if they had said, look, we're starting to run out of caution laps here, or we're starting to run out of time here. There's a lot of cautions being taking place. Let's not stop the race here at the end of stage 2, because now we're just going to cost another 5-10 minutes off this clock that's already running down really quickly. Because when they restarted, I think they only had 59 minutes to go, and you knew you weren't going to get to a full race, and you knew that every lap under green was going to help. Everybody needed that to try to give the best shot possible to the competitors. So yeah, I would have preferred, like, maybe next time in that situation, then go, all right, we're restarting now, and by the way, we're not going to stop for stage break. You're not buying this at all, it seems like.
No, rules are rules, Jeff, and we know the rules going into the event. There are going to be stage breaks. We can't just randomly on the fly make up rules. Like, we're going to have stage breaks. That's the way it is. Stage breaks are wonderful.
Well, if you can't randomly make up rules on the fly or change policies on the fly, I guess, can you explain to me, Jordan, why at New Hampshire they wouldn't let the teams do live competitive pit stops to change to the wet to dry tires, because that was deemed too much of a safety risk. But yet here today, pit road was absolutely drenched, and they completely left it up to the teams just a couple weeks later, after saying they couldn't do that, to let them come on pit road and do live pit stops. What was the difference there?
Well, the difference is that a colleague of mine named Jeff Gluck went on the Teardown and made it very clear what his opinion was. And as we know, when Jeff speaks, much like Kyle Larson's waiver, your letter to NASCAR got Kyle Larson his waiver. They listened to you. They heard your stance. They listened.
All right, come on. What's your real answer?
That was my real answer. You're an influencer.
Stop. Give me your real answer.
I don't.
How do you explain that?
I don't explain it. There's a lot of things today that happened I didn't quite understand in terms of officiating.
Well, you want me to go on a rant, and then you're like, well, I'm saying, what's your justification?
I don't have a justification. There was a lot of things that happened today that made me scratch my head. Like, there was between stage 1 and 2, it felt like there was too much leg there. Too many laps were wasted. There was moments today where you're going, why? It felt like some of the cautions were dragged out a little bit. It just feels like sometimes it feels like when things are happening like there's so much happening, it's almost like NASCAR's paralyzed almost by like, what do we do here? How do we handle this situation? And it's frustrating because I feel like you could have had more laps of competition today. You could have more green flag laps. And your point about, listen, I do not like stage breaks. I like Michael Dowell made a really good point when he said, I want the fastest car to win race, and it feels like stage breaks take away from it, especially on tracks like this, especially at like in Indianapolis or Pocono, or I throw even super speedways in there. And it's frustrating because it really forces teams to make a choice between going for points or going for the win often, and I don't like it at all. And I don't think it's an unreasonable rule to have that in play when you say, like, hey, we're going to a timed race now because of the conditions and whatnot. Of now we're going to do away with the break and just keep this going. As long as you can give them again, it goes back to as long as you can continue to give them enough time, advance notice, if you will.
It was just, it seems to be sort of just still. Because, like, again, with, like, now I get that it was an oval, but with the New Hampshire stuff, there was a lot made of, like, these are not rain tires. They're wet weather tires because we won't use these in the rain, right? They're wet weather tires. And they're almost like it's damp tires because we will never run in those situations, right? And, again, I know this is a road course and that was an oval, but it was very, very much raining. And on the restart, the lap that SVG ended up getting wrecked, when they started that, I mean, there was spray. They could not see. The farther back in the field, they could not see at all. And it almost had flashes of that Coda incident, when they're trying to go down the backstretch and they can't see and they're in the driving rain. So I need clarity on why in certain situations it's like, we're not going to race in the rain. We're not going to have the spray, if that's too much of an issue. And we're not going to have live pit stops on pit road in the rain. But then again, you turn around and it's like, yeah, go for it. Like we're sending it today. Like I was confused on that. I didn't understand where that was coming from, or I don't know. I didn't get it. That was all. But
there was moments in the race where it felt like Coda 2021, where the rain was heavy, guys couldn't see. Martin Truex Jr. said multiple times he couldn't see anything around him. Some other drivers did too, and it was like, this is, I'm all for wet weather tires and everything else, but the conditions seemed had reached a point where it was like, you need to park them for the safety of everybody's well-being. And when you have guys, completely losing it going into a corner, and they have no opportunity to slow down really, and end up going head on into a tire barrier, it's like, okay, we may hit the pause button here and wait until there's a better opportunity to resume this race.
Yeah. Well, let's briefly talk about the was it a good race poll, which again, it's getting very uncomfortable for me now.
Long season.
Because now it's 11-10. So you have made quite the comeback. I've really blown it, and I'm in danger of you may tie this thing up. But how are people going to vote on this race, given all that happened with the herky jerky starting and stopping and not seeing the full race and all that stuff?
What was the vote? What was the number last year?
Oh, for this race?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry. I can't look it up right now.
Great research.
I think it was pretty high.
Way to prep. I mean, I make notes and everything here, and anyway. No, there's a lot of frustration. It felt like. I think people are going to be voting that. I'm going to say 35%.
35.
35, because there's the frustration of how this kind of unfolded. That was cut short. There is a lot of pushback on the start time thing, which I don't agree with. I don't see how this does better than the 35.
Yeah, I'll go 32. I think it'll be fairly low. I think people just were kind of mad all day, and they just didn't. I don't know. I just don't know that they loved it. Maybe this could be one of those situations, just like New Hampshire, where we were guessing both super low and it ends up being way higher.
That's fine, because I'm higher than you, so I'll take it.
Yeah,
I mean, Bowman's a popular winner.
Yeah, and it was good.
It was a good fit.
The
racing was good. I mean, there was some really, like, watching SVG come up at the beginning of the race and just, man, he's so good. Like, watching him make moves.
It's not the course that's the problem.
No, the course is not the problem. The course is fantastic. The course is honestly one of the best street courses I've ever seen.
It's
simply fantastic.
A weather issue that
Mother
has
Nature
caused all
sucks.
these stupid things.
She's very cruel.
Jordan, I did drag you to the Chainsmokers concert, which you did not enjoy. You did not enjoy for some reason.
Not enjoy it.
First of all, half the time you had your back to the stage, and I was like, "What are you looking at?" You're just like, "I'm looking around to see who's here." You're just like not paying attention. Then the other half, you just had this sour look on your face, shaking your head. I even posted a video.
You were dancing like a goofball. Like you look like a dad. Well, you are a dad who doesn't get to go out very often, and it was just honestly, it was a little embarrassing to be standing there next to you, watching you dance like that.
Okay, well, it's supposed to be like a judgment-free zone.
Oh no, this is I don't know whoever said that.
Well, I'm saying when you go to like a concert, you're not supposed to be self-conscious about, oh, my white boy dance moves might be judged by my coworkers because I'm.
Yeah, well, I don't know why you'd ever not think that, because that was always going to be the case. Okay. When have I ever not judged you?
Well, I knew I would be judged.
Yeah,
I fully knew I would be judged.
The concert
to be
was
honest,
fine.
And I still enjoyed it. Anyway.
And my back was turned because I wanted to see who else was there. I wanted to go side of people. I'm a very personable person. I liked it.
You were turning your back on the Chainsmokers. Why didn't you like the Chainsmokers? What's wrong?
They are a glorified wedding band. Like, all they do is play. Majority. How many original songs did they play? 3.
They didn't play a lot of their own songs.
Thank you. So they basically played their cover band, and it's like, okay,
that's not. No, they're DJs.
Okay.
They're throwing a party, a dance party. So DJs play sometimes music from other people. You, as recently as 48 hours ago, thought they were going to be playing instruments.
Yeah, I thought they were a band. I didn't realize they're an EDM. I thought they were a band. I had no idea. I thought they were a legit band. I'm like, oh, cool. We're gonna go see them. I had no idea.
They're DJs. They have decks and they
make
songs.
I thank you for explaining what a
but
DJ
it didn't
is.
seem like you liked their songs.
Well, they didn't have any songs. They had other people's songs, and I'd rather I'd rather hear those people sing their songs. It was like listening to someone's Spotify list. Like, I'm cool. Great. Like, it was like going to a karaoke bar. It's like I wanted to walk up there with a little piece of paper and be like, "Hey, can you play this song next?" Because that's basically what you're doing at this point.
Have you ever seen a DJ? Have you ever been to a club?
I've been to
You think? I mean, what? That's what DJs and that's what they do.
Okay, so it was fine. Like, it's whatever. Like they said, they're a glorified wedding band. Like, there's somebody you hire to play a wedding. Got it.
But you surely appreciated the energy that they brought.
No, yeah, that's a whole different. Like, they put on a very good show. Like, it was cool. They worked hard. They put on a good production. The energy was there. All of those things. Like, I get it. Like, I understand why you would bring them in. Like, the crowd was excited. They appeal to an audience that maybe isn't into NASCAR, and you're getting them to come out. Like, I 100% support. It's not for me. That's not to say that I'm not one of those people like, oh my God, I don't like it, which means everyone else should not like it. Just not my cup of tea. But it would. That didn't sound good. Was that thunder?
Yeah, we had some sort of a loud crack behind us, so we may.
That's great.
Time here.
So it was fine. They put on a great show, and they were really into it, and that's fine. Like, I wouldn't have gone to Keith Urban today either, and from what I saw, it looked like he was working hard too, and put on a great show. But their music was just like, okay, cool. Like, if you're just gonna play other people's music, can you at least play like stuff I like?
Well, beforehand, before the Chainsmokers part of it, between the Black Keys and the Chainsmokers, they had this.
I've never heard of the Black Keys before. I have no idea who they are. Seriously. I could not tell you one song off the top of my head who they are.
Don't admit this stuff publicly, please.
Well, but it's okay to admit you don't know things. I didn't know who they are. Like,
it's one of this generation's more popular rock bands.
Really? I've never heard of them. I had no idea. I was telling somebody that today, and they're like, yeah, you probably have heard their songs before. And I'm like, well, if I have, I don't know.
You never heard Lonely Boy?
No, I don't know.
All right. Anyway, before that, there was this driver intro thing, and it was. I mean, I thought the intentions were good. They had a drum line, they had dancers, they had the voice of the White Sox announcing them and telling their backstory, and they had smoke and all this stuff, and the drivers were introduced one by one, and they all came out, and they were trying to hype up the crowd, and, it was, to me, look, I mean, did most of those people at the concert, had they ever been to a NASCAR race before? No, because they actually asked them, raise your hand if this is your first NASCAR race ever. And like the majority of people raise their hand. So, we just lost our lighting. Oh, they just turned out the lights in the media center.
I look better in the dark anyway.
Wow. This is great. Do they think we're all gone or something?
I don't know.
I hope they're not going to like lock us out. We're on this. For those of you not watching on a video, we're.
Did we lose the Wi-Fi?
Did we lose it? No, I don't think so.
Right. Well, I don't have Wi-Fi on my phone anymore.
Oh boy. Anyway, try to finish the show up. Oh my goodness. So anyway, my thing was the drivers came out. Oh my goodness, what is going on? The city's falling apart right now. Well, there's explosions in the background. I think it's thunder, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, continue before
Sorry.
we get kicked out of here.
Okay, all right. We're trying to.
What I liked, there were some drivers who embraced it. Bubba did a great job.
Bubba, Suarez, Ross, Kyle Busch.
I heard Buescher did too. I thought he came out and he kind of threw his arms in the air a little bit.
A lot of the drivers came out and they just went like this. They're like, they like barely made contact with the eye.
Yeah.
This is your chance to like be like, oh, like, hey, I mean, you don't have to do anything crazy, but at least make eye contact with the crowd and be like, hey, like I have some energy. I'm being an entertainer right now. Like they were just like, yeah. Is somebody going to be your fan based off that? Probably not. But like, come on, man. Like you could embrace this opportunity.
Look like you're having fun.
Yeah, just
it's. I never want to like have forced enthusiasm, and I don't want ever someone to be disingenuous in how they act and everything. And some of those guys are just that's who they are. They're reserved, and that's not who they are. But there are enough guys in the garage who are personable, who have energy and excitement, and have that. It's like bring it. Like to your point, this is your opportunity to kind of have that second, that moment, maybe to make a connection. do it and live up to it. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity there.
All right. Sorry to cut this short, but is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I think that they are turning the lights off the media center. We are losing our Wi-Fi. I don't even know if anybody can still see us on the stream. The city is shutting down. I'm sure we missed something, but
really cool of NASCAR to allow teams to choose their tire strategies today on whether to go with slicks or to wet weathers. It literally changed the whole dynamic of the race throughout. Let these guys.
Yeah, I like it.
I love it.
I just didn't know why it suddenly.
Yeah, I mean, NASCAR has said like they are slowly getting to that point, and it did feel like we kind of reached that impetus after New Hampshire. It was like, okay, we've been through this enough now, and especially on a road course they have, because remember at Watkins Glen a couple years ago.
I get it, yeah.
So but they did they let these guys do it, and that's what you want to see because it adds another wrinkle to it. It really lets these guys do some different things, and that adds another layer to this, and it made the race better today.
All right, we got to get out of here. if we can even still get in the media center back in, we're on this patio. So everybody, thanks as always for listening. We will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See everybody.